Pound It, a creative nonfiction by Devin Uriarte. Have you ever asked yourself why best friends exist? How and why it is possible to get so close with another being? A best friend to me is a key to a happy life. They help pass the time, keep me laughing, cuddle me when I'm cold, poop on the floor when the day couldn't get any worse, and of course, lick my feet after a long day of working my butt off. What? Is it weird that my best friend cuddles with me? Not when the BFF is covered with a coat of soft black and brown fur and they are heated from the inside out. Yes, my best friend is my pup, Molly. Every friendship starts somewhere. It has a past, present, and future, but it just so happens that my first encounter with Molly wasn't the happiest. Ironically, it was a cloudy and blustery Saturday afternoon. The charcoal gray monsoon clouds in Phoenix had clustered from all directions and looked as if they were about to fall from thin air. It was noon and I had just finished my homework for the weekend. My neighbor Harrison, same age as I, 16 years old, called my cell phone and invited me to go play with puppies. Puppies? I asked. Dude, let's go, I love puppies, and hung up. I threw on my sweater and we were off. We pulled up to a large gray building that had a sign overhead that read, Maricopa Humane Association. It didn't bother me that we had just arrived at the pound, but I was a little skeptical of what to expect because I had never been to the animal shelter before. Don't worry, man, it's super fun. These dogs don't really get to play all day, so just think of it as you doing a good deed, said Harrison. Spritz of water fell from the black hole above, tapping the windshield, which prompted us to head inside. At 200 feet from the building where I stood, I couldn't help but to hear the howling, barking, and squealing coming from ahead. Inside, the shelter itself reeked of piss and feces. The best way to describe the energy and the noise volume was like walking through cell block B at the state penitentiary. Vicious canines everywhere snarled, growled, and insisted they were alpha. Those who weren't up and barking lay sickly in their corner of their 4x4 cell. Depressed and shivering, and isolated, these were the dogs that looked like they wanted life to end in that instant. The first pup I witnessed acting this way broke my heart. There, slumped in the corner, with sad, golden eyes that gazed at the floor, and wearing a crusty German shepherd's coat, sat Molly. It was another great light time, no different from any other 372 light times I've witnessed, only this time the gray tone was darker and the pitter-patter of wet fell on the roof. Where does the wet come from, I thought. The wet has been my sworn enemy from the day that bodiless entity fell upon my back. Depressing memories flashed through my head of my former pack and life at home. They restricted me to the fence with those metal loop-de-links and left me out in the wet for days on end. The screeching of my cell door flashed me back to reality, and there stood the watch human. He held a shiny platter in his hand and threw it at the floor. As leathery, wrinkly, loud, and angry as he was, I liked the watch human. I devoured the highlight of this light time and nudged the now ice-cold platter into the corner. Bing-ting! That was my cue. Usually the sound of the ting on the door meant that the pick-a-pack humans were coming in. I slumped away in my corner, which I found to be the warmest in the cell, and again I was swept away by thoughts. Reality rushed back into my mind when I felt the warm touch of a pick-a-pack human's paw behind my ears. I didn't look up. There's no different from the last light time and the light time before. The human sees an impressive dog and walks away like usual. The human sat in the cell for a few minutes, trying to catch my gaze by petting me in places that tickled and some that did not. It was at this moment that the pick-a-pack human did something that no human has ever done for me before. The human kneeled before me. I felt the tips of his long paws slowly guide my head upward where our brains met. With the crown of the boy's head resting against mine, I saw him for the first time. The loopy fur atop his head was black, while his eyes were black in color as well. I couldn't help to notice the gleam in them. Whether he was crying or whether he was genuinely happy, I have no idea. But I can say that it is the first time I've seen a gleam such as his. Our eyes locked. The heat given off by his breath tickled my whiskers and shot up the fur down my spine. The ember glow of his smile radiated, turning white and black into vibrancy that I have never seen before, and the fiery pulse of his heart sparked a cinder into mine, which made me feel alive again. Seconds turned into minutes, and I found myself lost in thoughts. This time, instead of a bad past, I dreamt of a future. The human spent plenty of time with me until he had to go. His lips pecked my moist nose. "I'll come back to see you tomorrow, Molly," he said, and he was gone. The rest of the night was a blur. I watched the gray of the walls get darker for dark time and then brighten in time for light time. The ring of the ding-ting chimed against the door, and there he was, loopy fur atop his head like the day before, and beaming that jovial smile. The boy walked toward my cage. My body took over all controls. My wagger started to shake, making it hard to stand straight, and my ears shot back at the sight of him. Although this new tingly sensation sent ruffles down my sticky coat and made my legs twitch with might. This time, the boy spent a lot more time with me. He took me walking, introduced toys that made a high-pitched squeal when you bite them, and made me catch my now favorite item, the green fuzzy sphere of fun. The next 3 days consisted of the same thing. Sometimes the human would make it until almost dark time, which left my heart racing all too often. After playing on the third day, right before he left, the boy said, "You're coming home with me tomorrow night, puppy." I was ecstatic. Dark time fell and I was able to get some shut-eye before the walls brightened again. Deep into my dreams, I was startled by the opening of the cell door. It was the watch human. He grabbed a cord that the boy usually walks me with and moved me to another room. This room smelled of sweets and citrus, and the floor was covered with white, foamy wet. The watch human told me to sit down, and my body was greeted by my ultimate nemesis, a raining of pure wet from above. I fought an epic battle with the wet, nipping at its intangible form, shaking it away from my fur, and barking in hopes the boy would come save me. I lost. The wet evolved into its new substance, citrus-scented foam. That stuff stuck onto me like soft dog food sticks to a can. After accepting my fate with no help from the watch human, it turns out that the wet's new form, foam, made my fur not stick. The human then took me into another room which sat a lady. The lady was a gentle being, but the instinct in me told me to shut down and cower in fear. There were papers on the table and words were exchanged before me. They discussed something called adoption of some sort. After several moments, the lady grabbed the walking cord and the watch human gathered the papers. "Let's go, doggy. We're going home." I started to panic. The boy! What about the boy? He said he was coming to take me home. Who is this lady? The lady tugged and tugged at the walking cord, but I refused to budge. I whimpered and hollered out for the boy to save me, and anchored my claws into the hard floor. With frustration, the lady stopped tugging and lifted me instead into the air with her arms. She set me into a car very similar to my former PAX car when I was a puppy. I was done for. I didn't know what to do, so I let it all out at once. Right onto the back seat. I didn't mean to. I just didn't know what else to do. The rumbling of the car came to a stop and the door opened. While the lady caught a sight of pungent pee, I caught a sight of loopy fur in the background. Could it be? Forget the shame in the back seat. I sprinted out of the car, half running for my life and half running to see the source of the fur. I was so excited to see who it was. It was like somebody took my heart and replaced it with a new, better, and faster one. There, waiting patiently in the garage, sat Devin. Seeing Molly sprint out of the car and run into my arms is a feeling I will never forget. It is, in my opinion, the moment that secured our bond and one of the best days of my life. My mom called the shelter the night previous and went to pick her up in the morning. She told me it was fine that I stay home from school and reunite outside of a cell with my new bestie. Best friends come in all shapes and sizes. Some steal food from your pantry, while others will steal it straight from the garbage. I may have missed a lesson in algebra that day, but I was able to do some teaching of my own. Molly learned sit, lay down, stay, and best of all, pound it.